invitation to respond to this paper, A Canadian Culture of Generosity. I registered over 650 charitable foundations and organizations over the past 30 years. For the 15 years prior to the current economic turndown, I advised on charitable donations amounting to at least $100 million each year. Consequently, I witnessed the cultural, religious, and economic values of those whom the paper identifies as primary core donors at very close range. This paper identifies a growing civic deficit in Canada. In my opinion, the primary core donors do not suffer from a deficit of care. Instead, they suffer from a deficit of confidence in charities. Charities measure their success by the quantum of donations, whereas donors assess quality of services. It troubles me that this paper is not dedicated in one sentence to the need for charities to be accountable in terms of efficiency and productivity. If Canada is to truly foster a vastly increased level of civic engagement, charities must begin by justifying the effectiveness of their utilization of the funds contributed to them, both by private donors and governments. It also troubles me that the paper focuses almost entirely on the charitable sector in seeking to improve Canada's social architecture. Charities are the most restricted and circumscribed instrument for social change. The law of charity as applied by Canada Revenue Agency is entirely hostile to innovation and creativity when addressing social problems. The societal values which shape the law of charity are the attitudes towards the poor of Victorian England. If you want to understand the policy values which inform the law of charity, you should read Charles Dickens, preferably beginning with Oliver Twist. Consider what the law of charity has to offer Canadians concerned about homelessness. If you want to work with absolutely the worst drug addicts in the downtown east side, the law of charity will support your endeavors. However, if you believe that the homeless problems be better addressed by providing apartments for those who have just recently experienced the loss of their job, their first psychiatric episodes, or divorce, the law of charity will be of no assistance. Charities can build ghettoized accommodations for the destitute, but cannot adopt a progressive policy of having mixed-income social housing. It's for reasons such as this that Benefit Today challenges clients to consider alternatives to funding charities. In recent years, I have counseled against donations worth hundreds of millions of dollars. While the tax incentive for giving to charity is alluring and seductive, the consequent limitations on a charity's ability to be innovative and progressive in addressing social problems means that it is sometimes, but not always, better to pursue other legal and tax instruments provided for civic participation. Foremost among these is a nonprofit organization. I'm in the process of structuring a series of transactions which will divert to a single nonprofit more than $100 million which the family intended to give to the private foundation I registered for them a decade ago. Another limiting aspect of the law of charity is that it forbids advocacy and other political activities. Consequently, a charity cannot lobby government to allow it to expand its programs to include progressive mixed-income social housing. Most Canadians are aware that charities are precluded from political activities. When lamenting the decline in civic engagement, it would be interesting to research the extent to which lower political participation results from the fact that young Canadians often start their civic engagement within a charity where active involvement in the political process is forgiven. In the past half-century, there have only been 3 cases in Canada in which the courts have expanded or modernized the deaf and charity. In one case, the courts determined that providing abortion services is charitable in Canada. Another decided that an analogy could be drawn between the word highway and the preamble to the Statute of Charitable Uses of 1601 and the Internet highway today. The third case, which affirmed the charitable nature of First Nations radio service, has since been interpreted as applicable solely to First Nations. The paper refers to the voluntary sector initiative launched in the year 2000, without mentioning that it squandered nearly $100 million taxpayer dollars without bringing an iota of change to the legal concept of charity. It's difficult for me to recommend to Canadians as the primary vehicle for our civic core, a sector which in the past 4 decades has lost every legal challenge to the status quo except these 3 cases. 2 years ago, Jeff Copper and I appeared before the Supreme Court of Canada to argue that the concept of charity should be expanded to include amateur sports. The government argued that CRA registered any organization which utilized sports as a mean of carrying on a charitable purpose, and therefore amateur sport per se should not be charitable because it would be too expensive for the national treasury. The Supreme Court said it could only allow incremental change to the law of charity. As a consequence of this decision, today, CRA is moving to annul or revoke the charitable registration of Christian camps all across Canada on the basis that they are being operated for the collateral purpose of promoting sport under the guise of advancing religion. Culleton Teen Ranch in Ontario announced publicly that CRA said it would annul its registration on November 13th, just 10 days ago. Solicitor-client privilege prevents me from naming Christian camps, amongst which my children have attended, which have been issued administrative fairness letters from CRA, saying their registration should be revoked because in the judgment of the government, too many hours in the camp day were spent having fun instead of being spent in chapel advancing religion.